Welcome to Partner Up with Red Hat, where we focus on enabling and showcasing the power of our partners. Here's today's episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Partner Up with Red Hat. We're excited to have Todd here with us, which is CEO at Crossvale. We also have Dell with us, which is a specialist at Red Hat. And of course, we have my co-host here, Russ. Russ, how are you?
Hanging in, sir. This is just a wonderful, dreary day here in Maryland, but this is going to be the exciting part, so I'm all for it.
I love cloudy days. I love when it's overcast, when it's raining. That is my favorite type of weather. I was talking to Dell recently because he used to live in Seattle. I was like, man, I was looking to move to Seattle just for that reason. And then we ended up in Nashville, which we love. We just love it here. Anyways, Russ, what do you have for us this week?
Yeah, just for a news story, I don't even really want to spend so much time on what was written as just trying to get a little discussion here, because this, I think, is a fascinating question. A group called R Street, they're a think tank. I don't know much about them, but they have this, the story says, open source AI in America, a roadmap to safeguarding U.S. innovation and national security. Now, I just want to take that and sort of even step back a little farther. How necessary is open source AI at this juncture? That, for me, I think, is a very valid question for us to be asking. For people who don't know, I have now been working with open source and with Linux for the last 30 years. 30 years ago this year. So I kind of have a bias towards things that are open source, believe it or not. It's just kind of the way it works. But I would love to hear people's ideas about this. Is this critical that we have an open source AI, or is it good enough that, well, all these groups are out here and they're doing their thing and they're making things accessible? Is that enough, or do we need the open source version? So let me just throw that open a little bit.
Well, Russ, this is Todd. I think when it comes to anything related to technology, open source makes a big difference just because of the innovation. Like when you have thousands of engineers out there, all with different problems they're trying to solve, all thinking how to innovate this and pushing this code base into one. And then everybody then being able to take a look at that and go, how do we move this forward in a way that solves many problems? You can't get that with 50 engineers sitting in a room in some corporate office somewhere. It just will not happen. So it is a must to go that direction. This is how technology is built these days.
Absolutely.
That's my thoughts.
How about you, Dale? You're nodding a lot.
I've been in the AI space a lot. I saw this a lot. And honestly, I think it's really important for two main reasons. First one is transparency and where the models are learning, training. We've heard about this. How do you handle certain sites and sources that they're using to train? Open source just kind of opens that up to say, look at this is what we're doing. And also the second one is we've heard about biases and things like that in models. It's nice to have open source. You can comb through it, see what they're collecting for data, see what they're using and how they're responding. As always, open source, I think it just helps to have that transparency. And even I'll just say to his point is, bug fixing, more hands on deck. Always good to get those bugs fixed.
Russ, I was thinking when you said, do we need open source? And the thing is, I think it's important to differentiate between the pure open source and the enterprise open source, right? Because I think it is important that if organizations are going to be using open source today, they have to make sure that it's going to be enterprise grade open source, right? Because yes, open source is free. Anybody can use it. Anybody can download it, install it, get it all configured. But if they want to implement the free version of open source AI or whatever it is, open source they want to be using, if it's not supported, right? If they're waiting for bug fixes to be addressed by the community alone, that's going to create a lot of security vulnerabilities in any organization, right? So I think what Red Hat does, right? Red Hat, we contribute to open source community, and then we bring some of those innovation that comes from the open source community in-house, and we test it, we validate it, we certify it. Now we make it enterprise ready, right? So I think as long as organizations are using enterprise grade open source, I think is fantastic, because as Todd said, that's where the innovation is coming from. All of this innovation that we see now in technology, it's coming from the open source community. It's interesting that it seems like the closed source approach, it takes a little bit longer to innovate versus the open source way. It's just so much faster. And of course, the closed source approach then maybe takes some of that innovation and then they close source it. But I think the innovation is coming from the open source community.
And you make an awesome point there about the enterprise grade aspects of this, because many people don't really understand that difference there. And Red Hat has really solved that model. And we've seen so many other startups that have come out with solving this for other technologies, like for in AI. You know, I can't imagine anywhere else where you're definitely going to want an enterprise grade version running these models, because if something goes wrong in there, it could go really wrong. Got to have the enterprise grade version.
Yeah, and one other thing I was going to add too with this is, as I'm looking around different articles and things like this, I saw it wasn't AI, but it was a Kubernetes related project out there somewhere that just announced that they're getting rid of their open source version. So suddenly it's paid only, and of course upheaval, right? Because people say, "Hey, we've been using this," and it's like you're not going to use this anymore. And this is one of the problems that we have to deal with, and one of the reasons why I think Red Hat is so on the ball for keeping everything open source is that if you're building a new house here with AI, you're trying to figure out how it's all going to go together, what it's going to look like when it's done, and then someone pulls the rug out from under you because a project that you were relying on was so important is now gone. It's now pay only, and it's like, what do we do? Well, if you're building your structure based on open source projects, you're participating, you're in there, you're getting things done, then finally you're going to have something in the end that you can rely upon. You can then deal with trying to get the enterprise version of, get the right support going and everything else with it, but it's built on the right foundation. And for me, that's so critical with something like this, especially for something as important as AI is, and it is radically important, as we all know right now.
That's true. Agreed.
So I will toss it back to you, Christian.
Thank you. We were so excited to just get started with this episode because it's gonna be such a good episode that we forgot to talk about what we're gonna be discussing today. Right.
Ooh.
So, but that's great. We have a great discussion about this open source AI and the implementation of it. But today we're gonna be talking about application modernization. The whole digital transformation around modernizing applications. And I'm so happy to have my dear friend Dell here, whom actually I met you in person finally, right? We met at one of our conferences here. We've been collaborating for a long time in different opportunities and things like that, but we never really met in person, and we had the opportunity to do so. Dell, welcome. How you doing, man? What do you give us a little bit of introduction of who you are, what you do here at Red Hat, and just a little bit of that here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing good, by the way. It's doing good. Happy to be here. So I'm Dale Linneman. My background is kind of a little bit different. I started out in network security. After network security, I went into web development, became a full stack developer. And then, of course, I started doing a lot more hardware, home lab work, started kind of looking more into Kubernetes and doing all that, AI, came over here to Red Hat. I focus mainly on OpenShift, but I have a pretty wide topic range I cover. So I do OpenShift all the way deep, but I've been involved in virtualization and AI. Christian, as you know, we've done a lot of projects together on ranging topics. So I kind of go wherever I can. Let my curiosity lead me to what I want to learn.
You were also involved with the Xbox development there for a little bit, right?
I was. So I was over at Microsoft for many, many years, about 15 years. I did a lot of gaming work. So I did Xbox, worked on Forza and a couple other games. And I was very fortunate to be there early on in Windows apps. So again, I think I have a little bit of a unique take on how apps have changed over the years.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a lot of fun. It's one of those fun jobs, right, that you get to experience. And as you mature, and then you get a more like a grown up kind of job now. But
Yeah, that's the thing is everyone used to hear like, "Oh, you work at Xbox, you get to play video games all day." And don't get me wrong, we played video games, but there was some work that happened too in between the video games.
what do you have for us today? Do you have any kind of updates around OpenShift here for us?
OpenShift has really changed, even in the past year, I would say. I mean, we've expanded deeper into virtualization. If you haven't seen anything on that, virtualizations became forefront in OpenShift. Everything else going into OpenShift with AI has been also moving very fast. We've been doing tons of updates. And going on to modernization topics, I think this all wraps together. That's the thing that I love about OpenShift is it's all in one. It's one platform that runs everything. You can take advantage of all those resources. We're constantly pushing that envelope. So it's like OpenShift has a huge roadmap. We're going to be adding more and more for all the AI work, vert work. Apps are always getting new things added to it. Of course, we support everything. So I could go on all day in the show talking about all the things coming for OpenShift and why I love it.
Tell us a little bit about the advanced cluster management, because I know there was a lot of new things that happened there. So if you could please share a little bit on that, that'll be great.
Absolutely, absolutely. So ACM, or Advanced Cluster Management, is part of our OpenShift Platform Plus, which also includes ACS and ODF and Quay, or Key, if you call it Key. But so ACM kind of came out, originally it was a hub and spoke architecture for managing a lot of clusters. And it kind of started out and we were using it more and more. We've done a ton of work into it recently, basically making it better for fleet management because let's face it, nowadays you have clusters everywhere. You're starting to do high availability, disaster recovery, region based. So you have clusters everywhere. It's hard to manage them. When you're in IT managing hundreds of clusters, even on the development side, you're spinning up a development cluster, a dev test cluster. You have to manage those. You want to pull them down when you're done. You want to leave them running. Those are resources. That's money. ACM really is starting to excel in not only handling all your containers to be able to push it to other clusters, really, really deep integration with security. So we've focused a lot with ACS bringing it in there. But then the really big feature that we've added again is monitoring virtualization. So all your VMs, you can see all your VMs across all your clusters. You have a nice dedicated dashboard now that's actually in ACM, so you can see all the virtualization across all your whole fleet, be able to manage them, make sure they're uptime, updated, everything like that. So really, really good changes.
So then the advanced management is not just for the containers, but it has expanded also into the virtualization side.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so we even added like nice dashboards so you can see, again, either at a cluster level or even down to the VM level. It really helps manage when you're using these large deployments. And again, talking about the modernization, the nice thing about OpenShift is sometimes you have these apps that are virtualization still, and they're just not ready yet to maybe be containerized, or maybe they're down the road going to be containerized. The best thing is you bring them into OpenShift, you run them as a VM right alongside all your other container workloads. As you're modernizing and moving forward, you can slowly modernize those. It allows you to take time to modernize. You're not under the wire to get it done in a certain time frame. So it really expands that. And ACM is just helping you manage those workloads even better.
Raj, what do you think about these new updates here, especially on the advanced cluster management? That's pretty
Yeah,
neat.
that it is good. It is so it's so necessary too. And that's one of the things that we are dealing with, I think, right now, is as we get into so many new situations and new use cases, we got to make sure that we can keep everything under control, right? We got to make sure that we have eyes on everything. We can make the adjustments and make them fast. I think it's great, absolutely great that we have all this stuff coming down the pipe. It is terrific.
We get customers coming to us or prospects coming to us and they go like, oh, could you tell me the difference between like OpenShift and Rancher? And we're always going to them and going, well, I think you're comparing two different things that are apples to oranges. It's really ACM to Rancher is really what you're trying to compare there. And with these type of updates, especially around the virtualization aspects there, I mean, it's got to just be making that much bigger of a difference between Rancher and ACM. Do you have any insight into kind of what's going on there between those two products?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have seen a lot of people that were on Rancher and they are jumping over. Now, of course, I'm biased on OpenShift, but the one thing is to your point, kind of on that, even just jumping over into ACM, the thing I always like to say is when you have a platform that all the teams are on, everyone's speaking that same language. And that's the kind of thing about Rancher is, yeah, it's great in a smaller factor and things, but you have to think it's just a piece, but then you have all these other parts you have to plug in that aren't cohesive. That's the nice thing about ACM is not only do you get all the management, everything there, but it's built in with your roles. It's built in with, all of your pipelines, everything, your AI workloads, all that can be tied into it. And so that's the thing when we see someone, using Rancher, normally they're looking to get more out of it. They want more out of the monitoring. They want more out of the platform. And that's where ACM comes in. And again, it just plugs in so nicely. IT ops teams, once they get on ACM from Rancher, normally they're like, wow, you can do this, you can do that, and having great partners that kind of push us out there, get things set up for us, a huge help because, like you said, a lot of things are moving. Someone might be used to Rancher. Great to have a partner be able to come in, get some enablement, get some hands-on work with them, really get it off the ground. So we've been seeing a lot of movement that way. I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah, the beauty of OpenShift is that our customers can start with building just applications, very simple, right into OpenShift, and they can just deploy a couple applications. For those that are not fully ready to modernize, they can use virtual machines as well. Gradually, they can start modernizing and digitally transforming their organization right into a modern platform. And that is not just the technology, it's not just the software, it's not just the hardware that is modernizing, is a whole approach, right? It is the people in the process, is the culture, is the processes that they have in place that little by little they can start modernizing. Now, I think ACM is just kind of that pinnacle, right? When they get to that, the full modernization that may include virtualization, AI applications, and all that, then now they're a lot more mature in how they are approaching their modernization. And now they have applications running, they have AI workloads running, they have virtual machines running. So now ACMs allows them to really manage this much bigger cluster that maybe across different regions or data centers and such, and be able to manage them a lot more efficiently and effectively. And so that's why I love OpenShift, because it's really a way to gradually get there. Right. And you don't have to just you have just one flavor that you're gonna choose from, and that's all you get. No, you want to start slow, you can. We have these different options for you to be able to start with that.
Christian, you just reminded me of something I want to mention real quick is something we didn't even mention is hybrid cloud. That's another big integration with ACM is so again, you're spinning up these clusters sometimes quicker, or sometimes you need to augment your workload. A lot of workloads these days have to scale. Some of them might be bursty. Maybe it's a retail outlet around shopping periods that, holidays, Black Fridays. It could be things like that, viral things that burst up and have to scale. The nice thing is ACM has built-in cloud access. You can do Azure, GCP, AWS, and spin clusters up in a second. I mean, basically, you have all your credentials configured. It's just create a cluster and it'll create it in your cloud account and connect it into ACM. You start leveraging things like Ansible, stuff like this. You can scale so fast, very quick. You no longer the days of waiting for things to go from cold to hot. You can have a cold, instance in your cloud, hybrid cloud somewhere if you're using, say Azure or something, or AWS. Boom, on demand, you have clusters spinning up to be able to expand those workloads. Huge, huge bonus there.
Yeah, that's something like from Crossvale standpoint. One of the things we do is we have a service called PodOps for OpenShift, which is a managed service that manages OpenShift for customers. So you don't need a subject matter expert. We help design those types of things like that. And then we also use the Red Hat CCSP licensing. So you could burst and will charge you by the hour and then come back down, like just think of like Ticketmaster, right? You got boom, 10 a.m. tickets go up, you got to burst way up and come back down. So like finding models like that that work for your use case, it's important to work with, partners that know how to like not only get you what you need, but also be able to then get that cost model in line with your usage. And so ACM is a major part of how we help customers solve those problems.
I think this is a great example of the open source approach, right? I remember when ATM was first introduced and the capabilities were not where we wanted them to be yet, right? But it was a great way to get them introduced into the market and some of the features and capabilities. But look where we are now. I mean, now we have the cloud now that can also be integrated. We have AI workload. We have virtualization. So I can't imagine where we're gonna go next, right? So I think it's the beauty of the open source community continuing to contribute to these advances in technology, and Red Hat putting the enterprise grade capabilities into it. So I think is the beauty, a great example of the open source community at work, and continuing to bring new features, great features to our customers.
That goes back to the beginning of what we were talking about right in the very beginning of the conversation about open source and,
So
and
true.
how the innovation is there. Exactly. More and more people that are using it are innovating. So it's awesome. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And Todd, so you were mentioning here a little bit about some of the great capabilities and some of the great things that Crossware is able to do for our customers. Todd, why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction of who you are and a little bit of an introduction of Crossvale?
Oh, very good. Yeah. Todd Millard, I'm CEO with Crossvale. Been around with Crossvale for about 11 years. We are a workload modernization company. Like we have, we've been around since 2001. We have operations across North America, EMEA. We've done opportunities in like Saudi Arabia, Africa, all across Europe. A lot of the expertise that we have is in banking. We do a lot of work in the banking capital market space as well, but have customers in like fields like pharmaceuticals, healthcare, retail, logistics, that type of stuff as well. But we're an interesting partner for Red Hat, because if you think of most Red Hat partners, they come from the infrastructure part of the world. They go, hey, we knew Linux really well, and then we started growing into this, modern, platform that Red Hat has kind of grown into as well. But we came from the app dev side of the world, so we spent years developing applications using middleware to be able to help support those enterprise customers get more out of those applications and move their data where they need to be. And so over the years, we kind of grew as DevOps became a big part of what we were trying to help our customers with. We learned a lot more about DevOps, learned more about infrastructure, and kind of grew into going, hey, containerization is really the way to go. So in about 2016, 2017, we started working with OpenShift. And I remember this story. I was sitting in Abu Dhabi at this telco meeting with a Red Hat rep there, and he had brought up like OpenShift and how great this is going to be. And I remember walking out of that meeting and going, oh, what the hell is OpenShift? And then looking it up and going, oh wow, this thing looks pretty cool. Like, and then being able, and we started looking at that for a way to be able to solve some problems for existing customers. And then we never looked back. Since then, we've actually transformed our business into focusing the majority of everything we do on helping people get out of legacy and into containers. And about 90% of everything that we do in containers is on the OpenShift platform.
Wonderful. Now, let me ask you a question here, because I know, believe it or not, once upon a day, I actually did a lot of code back when this beard was a whole lot darker and all sorts of stuff. All sorts of things were different in the world back then. But I remember from those days that some of these applications were these gigantic monoliths. And it was like, oh, we need better performance. It's like, okay, go to the hardware catalog and see, can we get a bigger server? Can we get more memory? Can we get a faster CPU? Because that was the only way to deal with it. You couldn't scale it out. You had to just get a bigger box. And I'm thinking that when you start talking about application modernization to some of these people, there's got to be a degree of fear that comes into the eyes, thinking, how are we going to take this behemoth that maybe we don't even fully understand anymore? We're still trying to, but we're trying to keep it together because it's so critical. But how do you go about building that in a group of containers and services and stuff, and not lose your mind? Not so. Maybe could you talk a little bit about the difference in the mindset, but also, is there a practical approach that you folks use to get people to go from the monolith mindset down into a containerized mindset?
A very big question, and it's very different for many organizations. And this is why working with an organization that focuses in this area, we have different ways that we can solve this for our customers. Like in one thing that we're always looking for with customers is in relation to like, how do we find this inflection point that is going to help them find that starting point to be able to move into the modernization, into a container environment. Sometimes it is that big monolith that you need to use the strangler pattern to kind of pull out pieces of the monolith to be able to then create microservices where, and I like to use this analogy around this, where I'm like, I look at this monolith like a big commercial building, right? So you built this huge commercial building. You have all the people that's the data coming and going. And then you have like in the morning, the Starbucks has like a super, super long line. Like you got 100 people in line. So instead of just building another Starbucks, you build a whole nother commercial building and you put it next to it. And then you build another one and another. And that's what we do in IT. The legacy method of doing it is let's just build the whole thing and we're going to keep on doing that versus going, why don't we pull this Starbucks out, make a microservice out of it. And now let's create those all across that area. So now we can actually serve those people quickly. And then we can shut down those Starbucks. So we just have the one back there in that commercial building. And that's how you take that monolith and go, let's find the parts that are being used a lot more. And then how do we get that code in a way that we can scale it up and scale it back down? One of the other analogies that I like to use to be able to kind of explain what's going on in the world today, when we take a look at our legacy IT versus moving to containers, I take a look at VMs like video rental. And VMware would be Blockbuster. It's the dominant one in the industry. We all loved to go to Blockbuster. Friday night, we would go down there, find a movie that we want. You know, they wouldn't maybe have what we want. We had to get something different. You watch them, you bring them back, rewind the tape, or, you know, whatever you had to do, all of this manual stuff that you had to do. Well, that's video rental. But in today's world, we're in a digital streaming world, which is containers. And so OpenShift is like Blockbuster. I mean, is like Netflix. So Netflix has come along and they built a way to be able to solve the outcome of I want to watch a movie so much better. You can sit on your couch, pick whatever you want, and you're served up all this. Now, back in the early days, a lot of people still went to Blockbuster, didn't move over to the streaming services because there wasn't a lot of streaming movies for you to view. Then that's been solved. So now there's unlimited, like almost everything comes streaming. And this is the same thing when you think of third-party products. Early on in the day of OpenShift or containerization, a lot of third-party products were still being delivered as a monolith. Now, almost 80% of them, you can go out there and you get a containerized version. So now you have all this stuff, somebody else has done all the hard work for you. So and then also now we take a look at the fact that a lot of people are upset with Broadcom over raising their rates when they bought VMware. So I ask the question to customers and I say, if we're in this new world and you're upset with Blockbuster for raising your prices by 3x, why are you looking at opening a Hollywood video account? You're going to get the same service when you really should be moving to digital streaming. How many of us rent videos today? Maybe if you're up in a cabin somewhere, there's no internet, there's still some video rental. And that's where VMs are going to go, right? You're still going to have some of that, but it's going to be very edge cases. We're all moving to containers. There's no reason to go look at another hypervisor. And this is why OpenShift virtualization is the best and only solution you should really look at, because you have the virtualization, like Dell was saying, and the containers that run side by side. And you can now do your modernization at your own speed, not at the speed of when your licensing agreement is coming up.
That's so important. And can you speak a little bit to that method when you're talking to that application developer and they've got monoliths, they've got VMs. And it's like how can you help them grab hold of what it is to containerize something like that? I mean, you mentioned microservices and stuff like this, but I mean, is there any sort of philosophy, shall we say, that perhaps you talk about with them to get them to understand this is a doable thing? This is not. You don't have to be fearful of the great big boogeyman. You can actually do this, and now because you're in OpenShift virtualization, hopefully you now have time to do this because it's not about oh my gosh, our bill is coming in here in October, and we still have all these VMs running. Well, you don't have to worry about that game so much anymore.
I think earlier it was brought up. This is more than just technology, right? This is people, processes, and technology that all have to change. And how we approach that with our customers is understanding where their pain is in their software development lifecycle. Like some of it is the business is not getting the changes they need as quickly as possible. Some of it is a lot of manual processes that are built into the way that they've been dealing with the legacy system. Some is the testing takes too long. Like it's like, oh my gosh, we built this and now we have to test the whole entire monolith. So trying to understand that. And when we understand the areas that are not the areas that are kind of giving them some pain, we actually do workshops. So we'll go in, and a lot of the ways that we work with customers is it's usually infrastructure team that'll kind of bring us in. Ops, we'll be working with them. There'll be some sort of need, maybe a use case that they have an app team that needs, or a third party product, and you kind of start off in that area where you're proving that this is working. But we reach out to the application teams when we're working in those clients, and then we start to train them on what OpenShift can do, the self-service capabilities, how to actually then do the development, and work with them in their own code base, and what they're looking to accomplish, so that we can do a workshop so they can start to see how to do it. Because what we want to do is we want to get to that list of projects that's coming down the pike. Because what's happening is these guys start to make the same decision, go, hey, we got this problem, I got to solve this. And they default to solving it the same way they always used to solve it. And then OpenShift says they're not being used. What we have to do is get them to make a new decision to say, hey, that thing that we saw, that workshop that we did, and we learned that thing, why don't we build that project here? And or like one of our customers that we just finished. So we just finished a big project with them where we wrote a CRM, built microservices to take out Salesforce. So they had about a $3 million annual cost on Salesforce. We wrote it for about half of that cost, and now they're paying about 10% of that in maintenance for us to maintain that for them. And they had a custom built CRM for that particular company. Or actually, this is just for even one department of the company. Like we can expand this now into other parts. But it is going and trying to find. They had a tight deadline on this, going, hey, I have actually this deadline that can't move. And they were looking at solving this problem. And we showed them how in OpenShift and through pipelines and the software development lifecycle that we can improve there, how we could get the work done faster, and how we already had pre-built microservices that we had built from our next-gen banking platform that we built that's on OpenShift, so that we have ways that we can tie into their backend services and their channels to accelerate this, so that they said, let's try it. Let's go this direction, because we want to be able to get this development done faster, and we also want to have a modern way to maintain the software development lifecycle. So it was worth the risk to them, because the big payoff was I don't have to pay $3 million in Salesforce.
You mentioned initially in the beginning here something about, as I think, very, very important, especially because there's sometimes customers that may not have the resources or the expertise, right, in how to manage their container environment, right? It's maybe a lot of these customers may be coming from a heavy virtualization background, right, or monolith background. So managing a new platform can be a little bit hard for them. Can you tell us a little bit about the managed services that you guys have for the customers?
Yeah, in fact, this is super interesting, because back some years ago, I think this is about 2018, we were getting frustrated with trying to convince customers to move into containers, because we would do workshop and demo and prove this thing and that, because the ops teams kept asking for more and more, until we learned, we go, they don't really need that. They're stalling. They're scared to death that once this is built, they have to be responsible for what's going on in this environment, and they don't know it. So they're scared to death. So they're going, I need this, I need that. We need to get this training. We have to do that. And the deals would drag on and on and on. So we developed what's called PodOps for OpenShift, which is a managed service so that you don't need to have a subject matter expert. So you can get critical workloads running in your environment in less than 90 days. And then we'll actually run the environment for you for a year and train your team on what they should be doing. We bring accelerators to the table with that, also with all the management that we've done over many years to be able to accelerate automation and how we manage the platform for them. But the idea is, instead of going, hey, I have this need that I have to go and solve, I have to go develop this new platform and get my team completely up to speed and understand how to actually do all this. We can get you there super fast and then hold your hand, and you have a safety net with SLAs that, we got 30-minute SLAs on Seb 1. I mean, like we know what we're doing really well to be able to make it so you don't have to have a subject matter expert, but you can grow your subject matter expertise over time. So you start to take on that capability yourself. And we actually have different models inside that where we can start to transfer ownership of those operations tasks over to the business so they can learn it and then start taking on those capabilities while you still have a safety net until your team's up to speed and you built what you need in there and you're ready to go. So, and that's PodOps for OpenShift. You can go to crossvale.com and check that out. If you go to our YouTube channel, we have a bunch of stuff on that. In fact, a lot of YouTube shorts about OpenShift and some of a bunch of little capabilities, little thing. We have a thing called the container minute. So it's like these little YouTube shorts. It's less than a minute that just talks about all these little features that containerization and OpenShift brings to a business.
Kind of sounds like training wheels to me. Is that a fair,
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep them from falling. Keep pedaling. You're gonna get it before long, and then we can take the training wheels off and you're off to the races.
We've all seen this that have been around in this business long enough where there's one use case that a company goes in and says, I have this containerization use case. A year later, you go back and they're still using the checklist that the consulting company gave them. They have no idea how to dynamically change this, and they still have that one use case running in there because they have no idea how to add more to it. And they got back into dealing with their day-to-day on all the normal stuff. And they go, well, this is just another thing over here. I just have to run off this checklist, make this work, and we'll do the updates on this. And then it doesn't grow. And that's why having a specialist that understands this, that can work with your team to go, let me train your guys on how to get workloads in there, because it's much more than just the ops team. Like, you got to get the application developers to feel comfortable. The people that make the decisions on writing that code to go, yes, I see why this makes a huge difference moving into containers.
Yeah, I just want to quick jump in there too and say, first thing I'll say, I love working with Crossvale because, and this is what I'm leading it into, is because not only what you're talking about, managed service, do I feel like that is a very powerful part of modernization. Like you said, it allows them to focus on what they're doing. It allows you to bring the experts in to get it done and set up for them. But the reason I love working with your teams are because, like you said, they came a lot of them came from apps. You came from apps, that was your original kind of focus. Modernization, there's so much to it. You had mentioned GitOps and things like that. Automation, that is another thing that people really want to have set up in containers. But again, when they're kind of first jumping into this, and like you said, hair on fire, they're nervous what they're setting up, they're using the checklist, they're too nervous to go that deep into it. So when you come in and you're doing the managed stuff, you can set these environments up properly, start getting them onto automation, GitOps, pipelines. And really, the one thing I always like to say is that puts developers' hands on keyboard. Like, when I was a full stack developer, I wanted to be coding, but I spent so much time putting in tickets, requesting environments. You're in Jira, you're doing this, you're doing that. You want to maximize that coding time, as well as the company does. They want you coding. That's what you're paid for. And when you have your experts doing all the management layer, everyone has time to do all that. The coders are hands on keyboard. They're not worried about, they're learning, but they're not stressed. And it just really allows everybody to do that.
But one of the things that we do that's even a step further than that, most like you can go to a managed service, you can go to Rosa, you can get an ARO, something goes wrong, they're going to be up, clusters up and running, nodes running, working good. Like they're doing a great job at maintaining that cluster for you. Our team's engaging with the app dev team on the deployments. Like we're sitting there going, hey, you guys are going to deploy. Let's understand what you're deploying. Let's make sure that the resources are there. Don't let the cluster fall over. Let's understand this. And we're the guys sitting there going at deployment time, monitoring what's going on and being able to do a quick rollback if something goes wrong. So it's safety net for those workloads. And that's what the customer needs so that they can have full confidence. We call this container confidence. We want them to be fully confident to be able to make decisions with where it's risky to them because it's new, but to us, it's not. We're going to stop them and say, whoa, slow down. Like before you start making this, there's some things we got to do in the cluster to keep you from falling on your face.
And that keeps my heart warm because again, as a developer, so often developers aren't brought into this stuff, and so like the fact that you work with the developers to get them to understand the pipelines and everything, that end to end, they understand more than just their slice. And again, when we talk about monoliths, that's everything was sliced out, everything was siloed, and you threw it over the wall to the next team.
Right.
What you're doing is getting everybody involved and everybody training and learning. I love it. It just it makes that modernization so smooth.
Very good. Yeah, we love doing it. We enjoy it. Our team is really like, if you're looking for a specialist in this area, it's kind of like, another analogy. Like you're not going to go into surgery and then have your surgeon also handle your anesthesia. You know what I mean? You're going to have an anesthesiologist that his entire job or her job is to take care of that part of the business. And then, when it comes to modernizing your entire organization, if you need a specialist on workloads running in containers, that's what we do. And we do this also, we run into customers where they've been running OpenShift or running Rancher or Kubernetes or something like that for a while. We even have an assessment that we can come in that we run in your ecosystem, and in less than an hour we have a 50 plus page report that shows your supportability issues, best practices issues, all the things that you would need to work on. And then also for those people that are also looking to kind of get into containers, we have a couple of other different assessments. We have the container first assessment, which is what I like to focus on. Instead of just focusing on virtualization, we take a look at your workloads holistically and go, how many of your workloads has somebody else already done the hard work? Like we talked about before, third-party products. How many of them have already done the hard work for you? So when you come out of VMs, you can put them into containers. You can cut your infrastructure cost in half in most cases in that because you're running more efficiently in a container, and then move the VMs over. But we also have a proof of value for virtualization because obviously we have a lot of customers that are looking to go, I got to get out of VMware. And, I was just on a call yesterday with a company that a year and a half ago made the decision to move to Nutanix. And they're coming to us saying, we found out Nutanix is actually costing us more than it would have been if we stayed in VMware. So we're really looking to go to we have about 20% of the environment left. We want to put this over into OpenShift virtualization. We want to prove that out. And then as our leases start to come up on the Nutanix side, we're thinking rolling that over. So we want a proof of value to go, is this going to make sense for us? And we have the ability to come in that not only give you a proof that looks from the technical aspects of it, but also the ROI aspects of what your costs are going to be.
There's a lot of great benefits of collaborating with Crossvale in the field here. I mean, you did a great job, sharing the benefits and what makes Crossvale different, and thank you for that. But unfortunately, we're getting here to the end of the episode. We're having so much fun with this discussion. We could be talking for many, many more minutes here, hours. It's just such a fun topic. But as we're closing here, I want to go in this order: Todd, Dell, Ross, and then myself to do any closing remarks, any closing thoughts.
Thank you so much for inviting Crossvale to this. We'd love to have any conversations with anybody that has any questions. Our door's open. We very much appreciate the open source community, and Red Hat is by far the best way to go from a containerization perspective. So thank you everybody for the invite. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it. Dale?
Yeah, I'll just say, first thing, I mean, if anyone knows me, you always can reach out to me to talk to me. Appreciate being here. I mean, this is just like my passion. I'm a big geek. One thing I want to kind of leave it off with is for those that maybe you want to learn OpenShift on your own. Maybe, you want to try to bring something in. OpenShift's approachable in a lot of other ways. One thing I would like to plug is our sandbox, our developer sandbox. Great way to just go tinker with OpenShift. Maybe your company's looking at it. Maybe you're interested in it. Go tinker with the dev sandbox. Great to play with and see what it's like. And the other thing is, even if you're a big geek like me and you run a home lab, you can always set up a snow cluster or something like that to get hands-on. But, just to kind of start understanding it. But there's so many resources out there, just like to plug those. And I'm always happy to be here and join. Always happy to talk about OpenShift. So thanks for the invite.
Thank you, Dale. We were talking about maybe having you back for another episode. So you guys will see more of Dale and we'll hear more of Dale here on future episodes as well. Thank you, Dale. Russ?
I just have a really quick question, Todd. Do you think it's easier, from your experience, to try to go to a containerized workload with a new application or by converting an older application? Do you have any sort of insight into that? Because as you were talking, it just kept ringing in my head. It's like, is there a better way, or does it just depend on the customer?
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of different variables there, but a new application is the easiest way to get started, because from there we can build out the requirements, we can develop that new application and roll that out, and we're not dealing with the legacy aspects of trying to recreate, in a refactor an old application. That's going to be your fastest route to be able to see value. So I would always go greenfield. Take a look at that project list. You got something coming in. The actual easiest way is a third-party product that's containerized. They've already done all the hard work for you. Pick that up out of the VM, drop it in containers, there's a lot of different companies out there that now offer containerized versions of their applications. There's too many to actually choose from on there. But like a big example from IBM is Maximo. Like Maximo has forced everybody into OpenShift. And if you want to maintain this in your own data center, you're going to run it in OpenShift. So there's a lot of different ways to take a look at things that you already run that are offered in a container. And in most cases, you can cut your infrastructure costs down 40 to 60% because you're now running it in a more efficient way, not in a VM. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Christian.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Dale. This was a great show, great episode. Again, for those listening or watching eventually in the future here, we'll be adding some of the links on how to reach out to Crossvale, just to make sure how you can collaborate in the field with Crossvale. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Partner Up with Red Hat. Don't forget to subscribe to listen to these and other episodes.